My biggest critique on this book is that it's not on Audible. So Audible, please put this book on there. My name is Star. I'm a homeschool mom of 3, and I'm the co-owner of Acorn School. We're a homeschool enrichment program and community located in Gilbert, Arizona. So I get asked frequently what my favorite books regarding education would be. So I selected these 5 books as an intro to a few different concepts that I find are really inspiring to me as a mom, as a parent, as a homeschool mother. I would say 2 of them are very Waldorf specific, and then 2 of them are unschooling specific, and then throwing in that Life-Giving Home, which I think is just a really good book for homeschooling in general, or just homemaking in general, if you're a mom and you want to focus on bringing life into your home. So these, I think, highlight just concepts that are really important to me as a homeschool mom. And then once you kind of see what you like, you can go down different rabbit holes because there's so much more to learn about each of these philosophies. And this is just kind of a general overview, in my opinion, of a really good place to start. So the first one is technically an unschooling book. It's called How Children Learn by John Holt. He attended Harvard in the 1950s. He worked as a public school teacher for 10 years, but he ended up having a very alternative view of education. And his biggest thing that he lays out in this book, which is a very, very interesting book, and it's a very detailed book with a lot of research and studies. So if you're into that kind of thing, it's not like a very storytelly, sing-songy book. It's kind of dry, but it has a lot of good information. And his main point in philosophy is that learning is as natural as breathing. So education just comes naturally. Children know how to learn. You don't have to teach them. You don't have to force them. You don't have to make them learn anything. He actually can kind of proves that in this book, essentially, of really that, the saying, and we've talked about this in some of our podcasts. So if you go back and look on our YouTube channel, he talks a lot about learning. Traditional academic or educational learning is as natural as learning how to walk, as learning how to breathe, as learning how to climb a tree. Children do these things when they're ready and developmentally ready. So it's a really good book. He also is a proponent for mixed age learning. So in the book, he describes that one of the best people to learn from is not actually a teacher, but somebody who's just a year or 2 older than you, or maybe 3 or 4 years older than you. But a child learns best from people that are just a little bit ahead of them because that age gap is so much more attainable. You might be able to do something when you're 6. You look at an 8 or 9-year-old and you think, I could probably do what they're doing. But if you're 6 and you're looking at a 25-year-old expert in their field, that's way less attainable. So that children naturally learn better from peers that are a little bit older than they are. And he talks about that in this book. So mixed age learning, which is something that we do at Acorn School that we are definitely a proponent of. So that is one. There's a lot more in this book. That's just 2 of the many things that he talks about. So this is a really good one. I highly, highly recommend this one. Okay, so the next book, if you do any Waldorf research, you're probably going to come to this book. If you are homeschooling or you're interested in Waldorf, somebody is going to recommend to read The Kingdom of Childhood by Rudolf Steiner. My biggest critique on this book is that it's not on Audible. So Audible, please put this book on there. I'm a big Audible person, so I actually don't even have a lot of my physical books. I listen to books. But this one is excellent, and it's just kind of like a lot of Rudolf Steiner's Waldorf philosophies put in one small book. Because if you really go down the rabbit hole of Waldorf education, it is quite a rabbit hole. So this is a nice little starter book to that gives you kind of the high level information, which honestly, in my humble opinion, not an expert on Waldorf, but in my opinion, as a mom that did Waldorf and is doing that with my children, Mumbai, come here. I would say this is a good book to start with. And it really focuses on Waldorf's child-led approach, whole child approach. The other thing I really liked about this book, if you're a Waldorf teacher or you're a Waldorf homeschool mom, or somebody that wants to be a Waldorf teacher, anybody can be taught to be a teacher. And what this really focuses on is who you are as a person is one of the best, most important things about being a teacher, and being willing to really look within, self-reflect, and the kind of person that you are, somebody who truly loves children, somebody who is kind, is gentle. That's really what makes a good teacher, not just that you understand curriculum really well. So I just thought that was a really cool piece to this book. It goes into just kind of the basics of Waldorf philosophy when it comes to learning the alphabet, letter formation, stuff like that. So it's just a good read. It's short, and I would definitely recommend this if you're interested specifically in Waldorf education. So up next, I would say one of my very favorite books when it comes to education is called Free to Learn by Peter Gray. This is a really popular book. You might have heard of it already. If you're going to be homeschooling of any kind, I would highly recommend this book. I would say the reason I like this so much, and it kind of, in my opinion, Waldorf and unschooling philosophies have a lot of similarities. They both are very focused on play-based learning. They're focused on intrinsic motivation and that children naturally, instinctually know how to learn. And developmentally, I feel like because Waldorf doesn't focus on academics until later on, it really aligns with an unschooling philosophy of really focusing on natural learning methods. So this one is Free to Learn by Peter Gray, and it's just a really cool book. The beginning of the book is really inspiring. It's his own story with his own child's education, and then he ends up studying an unschooling school, which Acorn School is not an unschooling school, but in some ways it has a lot of similarities. It's a homeschool enrichment community, but it's not a school. You don't drop kids off there where they stay all day. This book studies a traditional drop-off school, but it's an unschooling drop-off school. So there's no traditional curriculum. Kids are free to move throughout the campus and learn as they will. It's really interesting. And it just goes through the normal fears of, well, how are they going to learn anything? And how are they going to get into college? And how are they going to graduate? And all these things, if they're not being forced to learn, how would they possibly learn? Um, and so it just kind of talks about that. And if you have that fear, it's a really good one to kind of eliminate some of those fears. He's got some really interesting anecdotes in here that I just really like reading. So I would highly recommend this book. It's an easy read too. So what I mentioned before, John Holt, it's a little drier of a read, so you may want to make sure you're interested in this kind of thing before you get to that one, because it's really good. But this one's like a fly through it, really easy read. So it'd be a good one to start with, in my opinion. And then this one might surprise people. One of the ones that I would say was really inspiring, and it's more inspiring. I guess I'll explain why I think it correlates to Waldorf education, but it's called The Life-Giving Home, Creating a Place of Belonging and Becoming, and it's by Sally and Sarah Clarkson. So this is also a really well-known book, but it's mostly about, it's not necessarily specific to homeschooling or Waldorf or unschooling or anything like that, but it really talks about the literal title of it, having a life-giving home and creating a place where your children feel like they belong and that they can grow into the person that they are. And one of the things that really inspired me about this book the first time I read it was it talks a lot about creating beauty within your home. And I always thought that before, in some ways I was like, that's kind of vain almost, to just be focused on making it beautiful. But just talking about how inspiring that is to a child to grow up somewhere that is beautiful, and there's beautiful art, and there's flowers, and there's a candle lit, and there's rhythms that are happening within your home that make it a cozy, place to belong that you want to be in. And I just really loved that. So as a homeschooler and as a Waldorf homeschooler, I feel like this is just a really interesting book if you haven't read before, that is very rich. It also talks a lot about like building your own community and inviting people into your home and hosting people and celebrating seasons, which is also really similar to Waldorf philosophy. They're very focused on like seasonal rhythms, and Sally's book is really focused on seasonal rhythms. And even if you're not homeschooling, if you're not unschooling, if you're not doing Waldorf, this is just such a good book about creating like such a wholesome, magical house to be in with your family. It's also on Audible. Okay, so the last one that I am talking about today is called Beyond the Rainbow Bridge, Nurturing Our Children from Birth to 7. If you're familiar with Waldorf whatsoever, you've probably seen this book. Maybe you've read it. It is such a sweet, short, simple, translated book, in my opinion. It translates Waldorf into a really digestible book to understand what it's about, which I really like because, like I said, that is kind of my thing that I found is hard sometimes with Waldorf literature, is it can be a little bit confusing. And I talk about this in our What is Waldorf podcast on YouTube. So check that out if you're interested in just kind of like a high level view of what Waldorf education is. We go through all of that. I'm not doing that in this, but this is a really good book if you want to implement things in your home specifically. I referenced this book already as far as kind of like a intro to Waldorf book, but I would say this one is much more digestible in a way that's kind of real life. How do I put this into action in my life, in day to day? So it's a good one to start with Waldorf. I would say if you're looking specific for Waldorf stuff, these are two good ones to start with, and then you can kind of go as deep down the rabbit hole as you want to. But this one even goes into like each stage of development within a child. It goes into the senses, will senses, feeling senses, cognitive senses. It goes into some discipline stuff, which is really cool to hear some of that approach. It goes into even just, it has some like songs and verses to use around your house and homeschooling. So this is a nice book if you really want to have an idea of kind of a daily Waldorf rhythm around your house, as well as maybe some verses for mealtime. It goes into birthday traditions. If you've seen our other video, we're going to be going around my house kind of highlighting some of the ways I've implemented Waldorf traditions in our home. And some of that came from books like this, where it talks about birthday traditions and different things of ways you can apply Waldorf principles in a homeschool environment. So it's a really good one. I definitely recommend this one. So what I would say is these 5 books for me focus on different sides of a homeschooling, Waldorf education, unschooling education. And I think that they create this like really nice ecosystem of a place to start if you're wanting to have a home that's based in those different things. So I highly recommend these 5 books. We will link them all in our description. Thank you so much for watching.